So the question is, having computed response spectrum, uh, what do we do with this response spectrum that we have with us? Any ideas? So maybe if I have this response spectrum, PSA in terms of acceleration due to gravity units in multiples of g. So this is a linear scale. This is what you will find in IS 1893 PSA spectrum. So what do you do with this? Let's say this is for %5 damping. Okay, so continuing with our initial discussion on single degree freedom system. So our let's talk of a simple building, maybe a warehouse kind of a structure which has some mass and stiffness. So this can be translated into equivalent spring mass dashpot model. Subjected to base motion. So I define relative. So this is a single degree freedom system because there is only one inertia point and we need to track only one inertia motion of only one inertia point in what there is only 1 degree of freedom, there is only one possibility of motion, all other possibilities of motion have been restrained by this roller underneath. So this mass can move only in this direction and therefore this is a single degree of freedom system. There is only one linear inertia term here. So relative motion of mass m with respect to base. So let's say this is u is equal to total motion of the mass minus subtract the base motion. So in terms of this, the equation of motion, as you all know, can be developed as in terms of relative motion of the mass and if you divide it through all the mass point inertia term, you get this normalized equation. right? So what is it that you need in design? Are you here? Are you able to see the screen and
Yes, sir.
okay, fine. So there was such a pin drop silence, no response. So so what do you need for a
Maybe
design? Yeah.
yeah, maybe we are looking for peak responses.
Yes. So peak response of what? What do you
Uh,
need for designing the system? When what if I have to say I need to design this particular building for earthquake ground motion, then
Maybe
what is it that I am looking for?
peak acceleration or peak displacement.
So what will
The
that give me?
structure.
Inertial force.
Inertial force. So how does that help? What will I do with inertia force?
So by multiplying with mass, we can get the force, horizontal force.
Okay. So what will I do with that?
We will apply that equivalent force on structure.
And so how does that help me in design? What do I need to do when I say I have to design this building? What do I need to do?
We need to see whether the structure should not go into the complete collapse, right? Means
So
that's why we need to see the maximum deflection. Because of maximum deflection, we will get the generated moment or forces, and
in
that we will limit the maximum deflection
good. So forces and moment in what?
in the structure.
So what do you mean by structure here? Structure is the whole thing. So where are you looking for moment and forces?
The lateral load carrying elements.
And that is,
Column.
Beam.
in this case, it is the column. So you need to, in this particular case, in this particular portal frame, all that you are requiring, all that you need to look for is what is the force, what is the demand that is being imposed on these columns, because the slab and beam, monolithic slab and beam are very rigid, so they will not really be a source of concern. So as far as the axial deformations are concerned, so there are, I mean, we are interested, we are worried about what is the capacity that I need to provide in the columns. So I need to find out what is the maximum force that is coming on these spring elements or these restoring forces that will be generated because of the deformations in the columns, because of the deformations due to earthquake ground motion. So now this will be equal to, if I look at the free body diagram of the mass m, right? So these are the action reaction pair of the spring force in this spring as this mass moves. So there will be, as the mass moves towards right, there will be a pullback. If the mass moves towards the left, there will be a push, and opposite forces would of course be generated as a reaction from the support, because this spring is connected on one hand to the mass and on the other hand it is connected to the support motion, support the base. Similarly, for the damper, the viscous damper, it is force generated is proportional to the relative velocity between two ends, and that is equal to Cu dot. Now these forces of course have to be balanced by the rate of change of momentum. So this is mass and its motion is, total motion of the mass is u superscript t. That's the total motion. Total motion including the motion of the base. So we have Ku plus Cu dot is equal to m for time invariant mass. For mass invariant systems. Right? Now this is usually a small number. So if this is a small number, so I can always translate it to ignore that small number and I will have Ku is approximately equal to m u double dot t. Right? Now this is of course time varying and I am interested in finding out what is the maximum value, because for design I need to consider the what is the maximum value that I need to consider for design. If I can account for the maximum demand, any smaller demand can be easily met. So for design, yes.
Sir, is this experimentally established that Cu dot is relatively small?
Oh yes.
Okay.
You can just a minute, let me finish this thing. So if this is Ku is approximately equal to mu double dot total acceleration, then obviously if I take the maximum values, then the maximum value of Ku max, now absolute value, earthquake is of course random, it can come in any direction, so we need to consider the absolute maximum and that can happen in any direction. So this absolute maximum is also equal to m times absolute maximum of this total acceleration times mass. Now what is this? U max, absolute maximum of U max over T. Do you recognize this quantity? This is what you have computed as spectral displacement. Spectral displacement for natural frequency omega n. That's the maximum response, relative displacement of the mass with respect to base. And this is absolute maximum of the total acceleration is spectral acceleration. Now spectral acceleration, interestingly, okay, I am running out of space here. So let us see. Spectral acceleration is approximately equal to pseudospectral acceleration. For small damping. Right? So here you have ut max over t equals omega n squared times u max over t, right? So what does that mean? That the column force Fs max is equal to, that I need to design, is equal to either k times u max t, or that is equal to k times spectral displacement for whatever damping and omega n you have, and this is also equal to m times SPA, because if you look at it, what is K? I can, this is actually equal to this. What is omega n? It's the ratio of K by M, isn't it? Stiffness divided by the mass of the system. So if I can replace this K by omega n squared M, so I have M omega n squared SD zeta omega n, and this quantity is what I call as pseudospectral acceleration. So mass times pseudospectral acceleration is same as what you have as the maximum force in the spring, and pseudospectral acceleration is almost equal to spectral acceleration for small values of damping, and actually they both coincide for zero damping. So the this I can also substitute this as m times SA. Right? So many times you will find these two terms being used synonymously, pseudospectral acceleration and spectral acceleration in design codes, because for the normal usual values of damping they are almost indistinguishable numerically, although conceptually they are different, but numerically they are almost indistinguishable, and you get the, as far as the calculations are concerned, you get the similar numbers to work with for maximum force for which you need to design your lateral force resisting system, the column capacities to withstand this amount of maximum force. So this is what you need to figure out, and the importance of this response spectrum that you have computed. Now you must realize, or you must have realized, that it's a rather tedious job to compute a response spectrum of a time history. It's something that not everybody can do it very comfortably. So that is why this concept of response spectrum was developed. Now once you have computed the response spectrum and then you specify this response spectrum, all that anybody has to do is figure out what is the natural frequency or natural period of this system that you need to design, what is its damping ratio, and just read out from this curve what is the maximum spectral acceleration. Let's say for this particular system, short period, it's a single story frame, so it will be a short period system. So let's say this is what it refers to, omega n. Right? Okay, sorry. It's on the time period. So let's say t1. So just read out this value SPA at T1 and what damping ratio. So all that I need to do is find out what is the natural period of this and then multiply with mass this spectral acceleration, pseudo spectral acceleration, and I get what is the maximum force in the column that I need to design for. Alternatively, I can just compute what is the spectral displacement and multiply that with the column stiffness to get the maximum design force that I need to provide for in the columns. Right? So that's the importance of this response spectrum, and that makes it's so revolutionary. The concept of response spectrum is so revolutionary. It was originally proposed in around 1934 by Maurice Biot. He was a professor at Caltech, California Institute of Technology. And then it was popularized subsequently by Hausner. Because you can, it was in 1950s. This was in 1930s. As you can see, the timeline, 1930s were very difficult times. It was economic depression, massive depression. The computers were not available, and immediately, in a couple of years, the Second World War started. So this concept could never really catch up. But after the world order stabilized after the Second World War and computers were beginning to develop and they were available for general public for use, then response spectrum computation became very, within reach of the profession. And then Hausner developed this concept further, that how response spectrum can be used for calculating the earthquake design forces. And that was a very revolutionary idea. It made design of earthquake for earthquake forces very, very simple, and that formed a major leap. Remember, I told you the first earthquake resistant regulation was the recognition of 10% of the seismic weight applied at the top. Just provide for this kind of force, lateral load resisting capacity, and it will have some amount of lateral load resistance, but it did not account for the dynamic behavior. It was a very, very crude, it was as if something is better than nothing. Some amount of lateral resistance is built into the system without really having any idea about what is it doing or whether it is adequate or not. But using this response spectrum, it became possible to have a rational basis of design for the earthquake forces, and the idea was so simple and so easy to use that it caught on, and even after so many years, almost 70 years, we still don't have anything to replace it. The earthquake forces continue to be specified in terms of response spectrum or design spectrum in the design codes, and we still use all our design procedures are anchored to this design spectrum concept, right? So response spectrum and design spectrum, what is the difference really? I have been using both the terms interchangeably. I hope some of you might have noticed that, but obviously they are two different terms, so there has to be a difference. So what is the difference?
Sir, I think in design spectrum we use a factor of safety also.
Okay, any other?
The response spectrum is response of existing structure.
See, it is not an existing structure. The very fact that it is a spectrum, it means you are computing the response of several different structures, different natural periods. They correspond to different structures, isn't it? So it is not a single spectrum, rather it is a single time history. Your excitation is same, right? So this is response spectrum is computed for a given accelerogram. Design spectrum is postulated spectrum representing seismic hazard at a site. So the point is, design spectrum can have has to account for different types of earthquakes, and it may be a far field earthquake, it may be a near field earthquake, and a very large earthquake occurring at a slightly larger distance. It might have some significant contribution coming in long period range, and a moderate earthquake occurring at a short distance might govern the short period range. So all these different scenarios are taken care of, and then you develop a postulated spectrum which represents the critical condition. So whatever may be the critical governing condition of source to site, different types of earthquakes occurring at different distances, and whichever governs the seismic response at the site, that is all incorporated into this design spectrum, and that is used for design, because when you design this facility, it is expected to withstand all possible earthquakes that are that it is expected to experience, be it a near field earthquake or be it a far field earthquake, earthquakes occurring very close by, or earthquakes occurring at a large distance, right? Now there are different characteristics, different frequency composition for these depending on earthquake magnitude and wave propagation characteristics. So you need to account for all of that, and that is why design spectrum, the important thing to note here is design spectrum does not correspond to any specific earthquake or any specific real accelerogram, right? It is a combined representation of the seismic hazard at a site, but mathematically both response spectrum and design spectrum they are used in the much similar fashion to compute the maximum response of the structural system by using spectral displacement multiplied by the stiffness or spectral acceleration multiplied by mass to find out what is the maximum force for which the system needs to be designed for, right? So that's the purpose of this design spectrum. So coming to so is this clear, the distinction between response spectrum and design spectrum? I have been using them interchangeably, but they are conceptually they are different, but in their usage they are used in the same fashion. They serve the same purpose, right? Namely, to find out what is the maximum response of the system, or this differential equation that we are trying to solve. All that I need to figure out is what is the, I mean, this equation, if I solve this equation, okay, let me, so if I solve this equation, you will get some time history. Right? So it is this maximum response that you are picking up, and this is what is U max at time, right? And then when I try to compute whatever is the maximum force response, Fs max is equal to K times U max T, right? And that is actually equal to same as if this is single degree freedom system of natural frequency omega n, so this is actually equal to K times spectral displacement of natural frequency omega n and damping, whatever is the damping. So either in terms of natural frequency or alternate representation is spectral displacement in terms of natural period or whatever the damping, right? Both of them are just alternate representation. What is the x-axis, whether I am considering it as a natural frequency or natural period, and that gives me what is the maximum force. So I am spared. The important thing to note here is, by using this response spectrum, everybody is spared the task of integrating this equation of motion, integrating this differential equation, because you are not really interested in finding out point to point variation of u, displacement as a function of time. All that you are interested in, what is the maximum value of this deformation that will generate this maximum spring force in the column, in the springs, and that is what I need to know to provide for the capacities, column capacities, shear capacities, and the bending moment that will form at the base because of this, right? So all that I need to know is what is the maximum displacement, and that can be covered in terms of this response spectrum as a function of natural period and damping, and you can read off the maximum response directly from this curve and then use your system parameters to multiply whatever the stiffness or mass to multiply with spectral displacement or spectral acceleration, and you get the maximum force that we will use in design calculations, right? So that's the basic idea of this response spectrum. So any questions about this? If this is not understood well, because this is a foundation of whatever we are going to work upon subsequently. If you have difficulty in understanding this, then obviously there is no point in proceeding further. Yes.
जो हम लोग यूनिट्स निकालते हैं,
हाँ, हाँ।
मतलब वो जैसे ओमेगा पहले जो बहुत सारा टाइम मान लीजिए P0 से एक्सीलरेशन मेरा शुरू हुआ, मीन्स अब तो एक्साइटेशन शुरू हुआ, और मान लीजिए T इज इक्वल टू 7 सेकंड पे मुझे एक एक्सीलरेशन की वैल्यू मिली, जिसके करस्पॉन्डिंगली हम लोग डिफरेंशियल इक्वेशन कैलकुलेट करेंगे। तो उसमें सर अलग अलग ओमेगा एन के वैल्यू के लिए जो हमको रिजल्ट आएगा उसमें से यूनिट चुनना है ना?
I'm not sure I got your question correctly, but see, this is the way you go about is you have one excitation, right? One accelerogram, let us say it is UG double dot, ठीक है? So this is what you have been given. Now you need to compute, you need to solve this differential equation. Now see, the right hand side is same, UG double dot is same. You need to keep on changing this omega n. So you will start with one omega value, solve this differential equation, get something like this, right? And then extract the maximum of that and tabulate it. So that will be omega 1, maybe u, I would just say SD omega 1 zeta, whatever may be the value, 5% damping, let's assume zeta is equal to 5%. After you have computed this entire time history and then extract the absolute maximum, you get this spectral displacement. Now you go back to this equation, the same equation, change omega. Now you compute for another value of omega, right? And again compute this time history by solving this differential equation. Now right hand side still remains the same, UG double dot, but it's a complete time history. You need to solve complete time history for each omega. So for omega 1 you will solve the complete time history. After computing this complete solution, you extract this absolute maximum, and that gives you the spectral displacement for omega 1. After doing this exercise, you go back to this differential equation, change this value of omega n. So let's say this is omega n squared, sorry. So omega n now changes to omega 2. Again do the same exercise, compute the entire time history, solve this differential equation, initial value problem for the entire duration of excitation, then extract the absolute maximum. That will give you second value, second point of this spectral displacement curve, omega 2 zeta, and so on. You will keep on doing for whatever number of oscillators that you have, the range of natural frequencies, and you will keep on computing this response spectrum, and at the end of it, then you will plot these at the on the graph, and that is your response spectrum. This will be spectral displacement response spectrum. If I plot this with multiplied by omega 1 SD omega 1 and omega 2 multiplied by SD at omega 2, omega n multiplied by SD at omega n, that gives you the pseudo spectral velocity, and that is what you have plotted in your exercise. So is this clear? Yep.
One point I was unable to hear due to network issues, sir. That one accelerogram you are talking about, that means that file we downloaded, that is a complete one accelerogram, no?
Right. That's right.
Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So for every oscillator, for every single natural frequency, you will compute the complete time history for the entire accelerogram and then extract the absolute maximum. That will fetch you 1 point on the response spectrum, right? For omega 1 you get spectral displacement or pseudo spectral velocity corresponding to omega 1. Then you go back to your differential equation, change the value of natural frequency omega n, so maybe omega 2 or whatever is the next value of natural frequency. Again solve the differential equation, complete time history and extract the absolute maximum, and that will fetch you second point on the response spectrum, right? And so on. You will go on with this kind of thing, and you will end up with response spectrum that you have SPV. Let me just say it will be something like this. It will not be so smooth. So for natural earthquakes you will get something rather irregular kind of curve, but this is how it will look like, right? So for each different oscillators you will get these different points, and eventually you just join them by straight lines and you get the response spectrum. So once you have this response spectrum, then anybody who wants to find out what is the maximum response, or if this is the specified, or this particular accelerogram is specified as a design accelerogram, and somebody is asked to design the system for withstanding this particular earthquake, then all that you need to do is just read out appropriate, find out the natural frequency or natural period of the system that you need to design, because you will know the mass and stiffness properties, initial stiffness and some initial geometry, and work out what is the natural period, and just read out the spectral quantity from this curve, response spectrum, and work out what is the maximum force, and then provide the appropriate, design the section accordingly, and that's all. So that's the basic idea of response spectrum, how you use response spectrum in analysis or for design calculations, and that's a very, I should say, makes the job of earthquake resistant design calculations very, very simple and straightforward. Any questions?
Sir, one thing I was unable to understand is in a accelerogram at t is equal to Tn, we are solving the differential equation. T is equal to means something more than 0, not 0. Then sir, our initial condition can never be u00. The previous case must be means the time that previous case must be considered as initial condition.
So the accelerogram starts at time 0. So initial conditions apply only at that point. For the next time step, whatever value you have computed at time delta t, they become the initial conditions.
In computer systems, sir, is that already accounted for? Means if we need to solve those things, we need not specify each and every time that thing.
Computer doesn't do anything on its own. It just follows your instructions. So what is done in the when you say LSODE, when you use LSODE, I told you that it actually predicts or computes the response like this. At any instant n plus 1, you find out response as increment to whatever was the value at nth previous time instant plus delta t times whatever is the value of v at t n plus 1, right? So I mean whether t n plus 1 or t, that depends on what algorithm you are choosing. So I would just say n or n plus 1. So the gradient, so it adds, so this only computes, I mean this is what I had been telling you, if this is Tn and this is, let's say, Tn plus 1, this is what you have as a delta t, right? So if this is value at time t Vn, so this is Vn and so this value is Vn, this value is Vn plus 1. So this Vn is n plus 1 is computed as delta t times derivative. What is the approximation of this derivative, isn't it? So this is what you have as a derivative at nth time. So obviously this approximation is very good if delta t is small. So entire algorithm LSODE or time marching schemes, it hinges on how well you can approximate this gradient function within this time interval, and that is what you project as increment to previous value. Whatever was the function value at previous time instant, you add an increment to that based on the approximation of gradient function, right? So that is how you get this. So now if you start at time t is equal to 0, so initial conditions are taken here. What is the displacement and velocity at time t is equal to 0 multiplied by plus increment due to the gradient, then you predict what is the solution at the next time instant, and then it changes. So whatever you have computed in the previous time step, that becomes the initial condition for the computation for the next time step. So that's how it goes, step by step integration.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we will stop here. Next, tomorrow we will start with how to use response spectrum analysis for multi-degree freedom system. So far we have been talking only about single degree freedom system, and that's of course a very simple thing. Normal structural systems are way too complex than a single mass and single spring. So how do we deal with that? We'll consider that next lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.